On Wednesday, August 12th, for the first time in 20 years, the sky over Europe is going to go dark in the middle of the day. The last time this happened was back in 2006, and you won't get a shot at one this close again for a long, long time. Total solar eclipses are some of the rarest events you can witness from any given spot on Earth. Sure, a total eclipse happens somewhere on the planet roughly every 18 months, but the path of totality is always razor thin, often just a few hundred kilometers wide. So if you want to actually see one in your lifetime, chances are you'll have to travel to the right place at exactly the right time. We're talking about a total solar eclipse here, one of the rarest, most jaw-dropping shows the sky has to offer. I'm Altair, this is Lo Spazio, and today I'm breaking down everything you need to know about this event. Where to watch it, what time it happens, and, most importantly, how to do it without wrecking your eyesight. Let's start with the basics. A solar eclipse happens when the moon lines up perfectly between the Earth and the Sun, throwing its shadow onto our planet. For a few minutes in broad daylight, the sky goes dark like it's nighttime. That perfect alignment doesn't happen every new moon, even though you'd think it should, because the moon's orbit is tilted slightly compared to the Earth's path around the Sun. Only when a new moon lines up exactly with the points where those two orbits cross, called lunar nodes, do you get an eclipse. That specific combination of geometry is exactly why total solar eclipses stay pretty rare and show up in different, unpredictable spots around the globe. Ancient astronomers actually figured out a pattern in all this way before they understood the mechanics behind it. It's called the Saros cycle. Roughly every 18 years and 11 days, the Sun, Moon, and Earth return to almost the same relative positions, producing a similar eclipse. Babylonian skywatchers were already tracking this cycle thousands of years ago, which is honestly wild when you think about how little equipment they had to work with. Not every eclipse looks the same. When the alignment is perfect and you're standing right inside that narrow shadow band, that's a total eclipse. The sun gets completely blocked out. Step outside that band and you're looking at a partial eclipse instead, where the moon only covers part of the sun. There's also a third type, an annular eclipse. That happens when the moon is at the farthest point in its orbit, so it looks a little smaller in the sky. Even at peak alignment, a thin ring of sunlight stays visible around the moon's edge. Astronomers call it the Ring of Fire. August 12th, though, is the real deal. A true total eclipse along its main path, with the moon fully blocking the sun for anyone standing in the path of totality. On August 12th, the path of totality will sweep across the Arctic, Greenland, and Iceland, cross the Atlantic Ocean, clip northern Spain and the far northeast corner of Portugal, and finally leave Earth at sunset just past the Balearic Islands. The single longest moment of totality will happen about 45 kilometers off Iceland's west coast, where the eclipse will last around 2 minutes and 18 seconds. Fun fact, this is the first total solar eclipse Iceland has seen since 1954. That makes this a massive deal for the country, which is already seeing a wave of eclipse chasers and astrotourists pouring in from all over the world ahead of the big day. The eclipse's path is also a bit unusual. It kicks off at sunrise in the far north of Russia, sweeps across the Arctic and Greenland, just barely missing the North Pole, then reaches Iceland before crossing the Atlantic towards southern Europe. But Spain is really the star of the show this year. It's the only place on Earth where you'll be able to catch the final moments of totality right at sunset, the fully darkened sun appearing to rest right on the horizon. It's the kind of shot photographers around the world have been planning for months. No surprise, then, that Spain is in the middle of a full-blown tourism boom ahead of the event. The country's last total solar eclipse goes all the way back to 1905, over a century ago, which makes this an extraordinarily rare moment, even for people living there. And if you miss it, the wait isn't nearly as long this time. The next total solar eclipse hits on August 2nd, 2027, passing over southern Spain and, interestingly, a small stretch of the Mediterranean near Italy's southern coast. So here's the question a lot of you are probably asking. Will I actually be able to see this from where I live? For most of Europe and parts of North Africa, the answer is yes, just not as a total eclipse. Outside the path of totality, you'll get a partial eclipse instead, and depending on where you are, it can still be a seriously deep one. The closer you are to the path, think the UK, France, Portugal, and other spots in Western Europe, the more of the sun's disk gets covered, in some places well over 80 or 90%. The farther you are from that path, the smaller the bite the moon takes out of the sun. Wherever you are, one thing stays the same across most of the continent. The eclipse happens in the late afternoon, with the sun already fairly low in the western sky, so you'll want a clear, unobstructed view toward the horizon. And depending on your location and local sunset time, the eclipse might be cut short by the horizon itself before it even reaches its deepest point, which just adds to how special this particular event is. As for timing, the eclipse happens in the late afternoon, with the moment of maximum global eclipse landing around 5:47 p.m. UTC. Convert that to your own time zone, and here's the practical advice. Find a spot with a clear view toward the west, no buildings or hills in the way, and get there at least 30 minutes before sunset in your area. Now let's get to the most important part of this video, the part you really can't afford to skip. Looking directly at the sun, even during a partial eclipse, even for just a couple of seconds, can cause permanent eye damage. And no, regular sunglasses won't cut it, no matter how dark they look. Here's the counterintuitive part. During a partial eclipse, the sky dims overall, which can trick your brain into thinking it's safe to look up. It's not. Even with 90% of the sun's disk blocked, that remaining 10% still pumps out enough radiation to damage your retina in seconds. And it won't even hurt while it's happening. By the time you notice, the damage is often already permanent. You need the real thing. Eclipse glasses certified to international safety standards, or professional solar filters made for telescopes and binoculars. X-ray film, homemade filters, regular welding goggles, camera viewfinders, none of that offers real protection. Skip all of it. One more tip: if you've had eclipse glasses lying around since a previous event, check them carefully before reusing them. Hold them up to the light. If you spot scratches, pinholes, or visible wear, toss them and get new ones. Even a tiny flaw in the filter can let through enough light to hurt your eyes. No certified glasses on hand, there's still a completely safe way to watch it indirectly. Pinhole projection. Poke a small hole in a piece of cardboard, let sunlight pass through it, and project the image of the eclipse onto a flat surface, a sheet of paper, a wall, whatever you've got. There's an even easier version of this trick that needs zero setup. Just look at the shadows cast on the ground under a leafy tree during the eclipse. The gaps between the leaves act like hundreds of tiny natural pinhole cameras, scattering little crescent-shaped shadows across the ground. A strange effect a lot of people notice during eclipses without ever knowing why it's happening. A plain kitchen colander works the same way. Hold it up to the light, and it'll project dozens of little crescents onto the ground. You can even take this a step further and build a simple pinhole projector box at home. Grab a long cardboard tube or box, poke a small hole at one end, and put a white card at the other. Point the whole end toward the sun, never look through it, and the crescent shape will appear projected on the card inside. It's a 5-minute project, costs nothing, and it's a great way to get kids involved without any risk at all. One last important note: kids and teens are at extra risk here, because their natural curiosity makes them more likely to sneak a direct look at the sun. If you're watching with other people, make sure everyone has proper protection for the entire event, no exceptions. And if you're planning to shoot this on a camera or your phone, the same rule applies. A camera lens pointed straight at the sun can get damaged without a proper solar filter. And while phones are less likely to be physically harmed, you'll almost always end up with a blown-out, detailless shot without one. If you've got a proper solar filter for your camera, you can get some genuinely stunning shots. But even without any gear at all, the strange light during the partial phases and those crescent-shaped shadows on the ground make for fascinating, completely safe photo subjects. Here's a fun detail for the more experienced skywatchers. During totality, besides the solar corona, you'll also be able to spot a few planets in the suddenly darkened sky. Venus will shine bright high in the southwest, while Mercury and Jupiter, much closer to the eclipsed sun and lower on the horizon, will be trickier to catch, but still visible if you know where to look. Anyone standing inside the path of totality gets to witness, for just a couple of minutes, one of nature's most striking spectacles. The solar corona, the sun's faint outer atmosphere, normally invisible because of how bright the disk is, suddenly appears as a glowing, jagged halo around the moon's black silhouette. At the same time, the air temperature noticeably drops. Animals often act like night has fallen, and all around the horizon, you'll see a strange, simultaneous 360-degree sunrise/sunset glow, caused by sunlight leaking in from areas outside the moon's shadow. And if you're already wondering about the next chance after Spain's eclipse in 2027, for a lot of people in Europe, the next nearby total solar eclipse won't roll around again for decades. It's a good reminder of just how rare and precious each one of these events really is. Whether you're one of the lucky ones making the trip to Spain or Iceland for totality, or you're watching the partial eclipse from your own backyard, August 12th is going to be a special day for anyone who loves looking up at the sky. Solar eclipses have followed humanity through history since the very beginning, read as omens, divine signs, turning points. Today we know exactly what causes them. We can predict them down to the second, centuries ahead of time, and yet they still hit us with that same primal awe every single time. There's something deeply human about stopping what you're doing, looking up, and sharing a moment like this with the people around you. A reminder of how small we are, and how lucky we are to actually understand the mechanics of the universe happening right over our heads. If this video helped you get ready for the eclipse, drop a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and let me know in the comments, where in the world will you be watching from? I'm Altair, this was Lo Spazio. Catch you in the next one. Hopefully, with your eclipse photos in the comments.